All right, in this example, I want to show you how to model a sloped parking deck. I've created just a 8-inch concrete slab. I don't know if that's the right size. We'd find out from our structural engineer what it needs to be. But the tools will be the same, and you'd be able to swap this with whatever size they give you. So you can start modeling it from day one and then update it as needed. So the first thing we're going to do is edit this boundary, and we're going to make an opening in it. Let's pretend our ramp is going to be in the center. So we don't use the ramp tool to make ramps typically because ramps can't host things and they can't show multiple layers. Like if this needed a 2-inch topping slab over another type of slab, you can do that in a floor. And the ramp tool doesn't give you as much granular flexibility as the floor tool does. So for example, this deck may need to drain and slope to the top of the ramp here and then slope down. The floor tool lets us do that. We'll cover that here in a second. But first, let's make the main part of the ramp. So there's 2 ways to do that depending on your situation. This first one I'm going to show you is using the slope arrow tool. This would be when you don't need a speed ramp scenario where you need to have multiple slopes in the ramp, but just one. So if you don't need that, you can use the slope arrow tool, which is pretty cool. It basically, you say, okay, I want to start there and I want to go to there, and I want this floor at the height at the tail to be at level U1 plus 0. And then I want the height at the head to be down at U2, right there. So finish that. And now we don't need to have a span direction tag. So now you'll see, I put my floor at the wrong level. Let me move that up to level 1. So there's our, quick ramp. And actually, might as well put this at the bottom. Put that back down there so you have something to land to. All right, and so that's all nice. You can use the join geometry tool to clean all this up and have a nice looking floor. Okay, so that's method 1. But let's say your opening's much smaller, and so you need to do what's called a speed ramp, where you need to gradually ease into it. Once the first 10 foot of the car is on, then you can slope steeper, and then you got to go gradual again so you don't bottom out. So to do that, we are going to edit the boundary of this ramp. And I always ignore the Revit's always going to open you to a area plan. It just does it alphabetically, which is kind of lame, but that's what it does. So anyway, it's a little bit exaggerated. We'll take it to there, finish that, and okay, it's just telling me I can't join because we don't have lines touching. So I'm editing the sketch of my first overall floor and the second one, and I've gotten rid of the slope arrow. So this thing should be flat at this point. And so now we're going to adjust it. And instead of using the slope tool, or slope arrow tool, we're going to modify these points. And this floor to floor height looks like it's 13 feet. So I can just type in minus 13, and that will drop that down. Or I could have done that from the plan. Now we need to add into it some split lines to more fine tune this. So what we're going to do is pick on our floor and add a split line. Before we do that, you need something to snap to that's where you want it to be. So I always draw some detail lines that I will remove later, and we'll dimension those. And I think we want it to, my memory says you got to go 10 feet at one slope before you can transition. Definitely double check that. Because it may be 12. But anyway, the idea is you ramp up for a period gradually, and then you can go steeper. So now we're going to add a split line to follow that. And so you see that that now snaps, and that's nice that that snaps. What this lets us now do is we can go into section and well, let's do it from plan. We'll say modify sub-elements, and we'll see that this line is at -1,1. Let's say now we can only go to -6 inches. You have to calculate whatever that required slope is, whether it's, and I don't know off the top of my head what it is. Figure out in 10 foot what the transition is, and then do that at both ends. So this would be, say, -12'6". So let's take a look at that. And so now you see you've got a ramp that goes down gradually and then starts to transition steeper and then levels out again at the end. So that's how I would model a speed ramp. And the benefit of doing this is we can place our parking components on that. So Beck's parking components are under the component tool. We have a generic model that's a line-based family that nests in actual parking spaces. So it does count as a parking if you do a parking schedule, but it is line-based. So you can see that getting placed there. And if we go look at that in 3D, we can grab on that guy and hit here. And you'll see that those are being hosted to that slab, and you can use your align tool to grab that, move it over. And now I only did really half the width of a parking spot, but that shows you there. Real quick, some tips with working with these parking spaces is when you move them, let's say you want it to, well, that's going to stop there. You need to check and see what happens here. It moved horizontally, so now it's actually buried into the floor a little bit. You see that? So anytime you move something on a ramp, just come back and change that to 0 so that it flushes out where it needs to go. And once you get one ramp done, you certainly can group this ramp and the parking, group that, copy, paste, align it to your other levels if you have multiple levels of parking. So anyway, I hope this helps. Oh, one other thing. So the other thing you may have to do is slope to drains, or maybe if this is an exposed deck, it's going to slope and the water's going to run down the ramp, or there'll be a trench drain at the top. So again, using the floor tool, it will allow you to modify the sub-elements of it. And let's say this has to go down minus, let's call it 2 inches. And over here, we'll go down the same. Maybe. And so now this deck is actually sloping to the opening so it can drain, and then we'll have to come in and you'll see that our ramp now is too high. Not a big deal. You're going to modify these sub-elements, bring them down that -2 inches, and then you trace this, work all around. So if that would want to come down 2 more inches also, so that'd be -8 inches, and so on. So that one may be flush because it's at grade, or it may slope different. So anyway, hope that helps.